Hi, my name is Sebastian Lucumi and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I would like to talk about how in the course of 3.1 years, yes, I have the exact dates, don't worry. In 3.1 years, I went from playing very beginner novice piano and having a completely horrible mindset approaching the piano to a much better mindset approaching the piano and playing at a, I would say decent level and being able to compose. So I'm going to break this video down into a few segments. I'm going to have what I call the pre-instruction phase before I got a private teacher, the instruction phase, that is after I had my private teacher, then the audition phase, which is when I was auditioning for music school and colleges, then the post-audition instruction phase, which is where I kept going with my private teacher, but I was just getting ready to go to college, not really doing much, just kind of focusing on my own, whatever I wanted to play. And then what I would call the post-instruction phase, which is where I'm at right now, where I'm going to have to say goodbye to my private teacher for a little bit right now, and then go to music school. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so the pre-instruction phase. The pre-instruction phase begins my junior year, summer of 2020. So it begins in June. So I was 17 at the time, I was 17 at the time, and I had this keyboard from when I was a kid that I hadn't touched in over 10 years, and I wanted to learn how to play the piano right then and there, because I love the music of Vince Guaraldi, and I said, you know what, I want to try and learn this thing. How hard can it be? It can't be that hard, right? It's not that bad. So this phase consisted a lot of me trying to self-teach and failing miserably at it. I wasn't any good at it. So it was a lot of me looking up online tutorials on YouTube and trying to match the exact notes that they played. And it didn't really go anywhere. I want to say with this phase, I knew absolutely no music theory at all, complete beginner. But I would say I was even worse than a complete beginner, because a complete beginner has no knowledge, but they don't overthink. I was trying to overthink everything, and I had some preconceived notions about the piano that most beginners don't. Like the idea that you have to be born with the piano, that music theory is harder than computer science, because everyone always says music theory is so hard, and stuff like that. So I not only was a complete beginner, I had a very negative mindset about the piano, about who could be good at the piano and who couldn't. So in a sense, I was gatekeeping myself from it. So eventually, this phase ended when my father noticed that I had been playing the piano pretty consistently, but I hadn't actually been making consistent progress because of a poor curriculum of just, let's try and learn a new song every day by watching people play notes on YouTube. So it was at this point that he offered private instruction. And I, having a little bit of pride, was reluctant at first because I wanted to really try and teach myself. Obviously, everyone has a little challenge asking for help sometimes, and for me that was a challenge as well. And I eventually caved in and said yes. So that marks the end of this phase. So in this next part of the video, the instruction pre-audition part, I'm going to divide this portion into two, mini sections. One being for my senior year, because this is a 2-year section, my senior year being 1 year, and then 1 year post-graduation, which is the other year. So let's start with my private instruction. My teacher put me on, I guess for the most part, 3 different workbooks, and then from there we would have different things we would work on. But just to keep it simple for this video, we would work on the Alfred Adult All-in-One course from level 1 to eventually level 3. Then we would work on the Ferdinand Bayer Elementary book for the pianoforte. And then we would sprinkle in a little bit of the Hanon Virtuoso in 60 exercises. So this is what I was working on with my teacher for 1 lesson per week, going from 30 minutes in the beginning to 60 minutes later, and then culminating in 90 minutes per week. It's quite expensive, but it is money very well spent, considering that I have been able to progress very rapidly because of it. So moving on to my senior year. So in addition to all of what I just stated, I signed up for AP Music Theory with only a few months of experience knowing anything about music. So that has its pros and cons. The con is that, it's an AP class, so you get the 1.29 multiplier where I live, but this is a very difficult class and I had no experience, so I didn't have the highest grade, let's put it like that. I was by no means the top in my class. So I did pass with a decent grade by the end of the year, especially for not knowing much. And the best pro of this was that it did this with my playing. It accelerated my music theory knowledge and my understanding of music drastically. So this created a very interesting kind of, I guess, division that I'm sure a lot of musicians can relate to, where my music theory knowledge was up here, but my ability to apply it was down here. So it made for a really strange, I guess, time where I knew a lot about what made complex performances good and how they worked, but I couldn't quite master them myself to utilize them in my own creative endeavors and performances. So I'll give an example. I knew all of my seventh chords, I knew about seventh chords and extensions before I actually knew how to play all of my triads on the piano, before I had each of my triads on the piano memorized. So as you can see, some rather strange patterns started to reveal themselves, but these patterns would fix themselves during this period, just towards the end of this period. So the next thing throughout this portion of my senior year, I tried to apply for Rice to Rice University here in Texas. And I mistakenly thought that, not even mistakenly thought, I just didn't even know that you needed to send a portfolio for most music schools. I thought that I would just, throw my hat in the ring like pretty much any other major, but I had no idea you had to send a portfolio. So upon submission of this, my application was pretty much dead in the water. So now I'm at the end of my senior year. I'm much better at the piano. I have much better understanding. I have better technique and better theory and knowledge. But I haven't actually been accepted to any college that I applied to. I only applied to Rice. I had it in my mind that it was certain that I was going to be fine, so I didn't bother applying to multiple. That was a mistake. So talking over with my parents after that, I decided to take about a year and a half off from college to get better at the piano, to re-audition for music school when I was good enough, and that way I could go to a top music school as opposed to go to one now where maybe the opportunities aren't going to be as plentiful. So that brings me to the second part of this little phase, being my first year upon graduation. So my first year upon graduation, now I had even more time with school out of the way and I could devote more time to the piano. In addition to that, I started teaching at this point, just for fun, just friends of mine who wanted to learn the piano, family, friends, neighbors, etc. Because it was just more time that the piano was in front of me. It was more time that the source material of the piano would be ingrained in my mind. And so I would say this is the point in my piano career where the basics of the piano really became solidified and I knew them like that. So in addition to that, I started playing at a restaurant solo piano, and that helped tremendously with my solo piano chops because I had to learn more voicings, more harmonies, tritone substitutions, modal interchange, principles of composition, but I wouldn't apply them to composition. I would just stick with reharmonization and I guess improvised solo piano performances. So this improved my, I guess, confidence at the piano tremendously. And by this point, I knew a little bit of how to improvise, not really good at it, but I knew what was a good sound and what was a bad sound, and I knew why something sounded bad. But like I said, I just didn't have the chops for it just yet. So in addition to all of this, during this time, I also acquired a license in health and life insurance in the state of Texas. That is my financial backup. That is my family business. I highly recommend every musician or person pursuing music as a career have a financial backup, because especially in 2023, music it's a very difficult industry to make it into, is what I've noticed. So having a financial backup, especially if you want to be more of an artist rather than someone who's constantly doing gigs, is something that I would highly recommend. So anyway, moving forward, at this point, I now was starting to learn more and more advanced harmony. So the vehicle that I used to learn harmony was mostly YouTube, like Noah Kellman, Adam Neely, etc., etc. And these are great resources that are, for the most part, free for anyone to use. So I think any musician who wants to learn harmony should definitely check YouTube. But in addition to that, I would use the practice of reharmonization to actually put down something using these skills, to actually create something with the skills that I was learning with harmony. So what I would do is I would take a standard like Misty and I would just put chords everywhere. No, you would not find a chord that was from the original song. I would substitute literally every single chord. And it didn't even sound like Misty anymore, but that wasn't the point. The point was never to perform this for an audience. The point was to just learn about harmony as a vehicle for expression, because changing the harmony behind the piece can completely change the emotion behind the piece. Not only that, learning let's say you have like 8 eighth notes in a line of melody and you have to try and harmonize every single one of those eighth notes without making it sound overdone. You're going to have to practice very good voice leading and counterpoint to be able to get a smooth sound out of so much passing harmony. So trying to harmonize songs to almost a superfluous degree was a very helpful vehicle for learning harmony, which in turn would make composition actually come rather easy in terms of the harmony department. So moving on to the next segment. So the next portion of this video is the audition portion, the portion in which I was auditioning for music schools to study at. So this was around November 2022 to February 2023. So the November was the pre-screenings, and then December was like when we got the results back, and then January and February was the live auditions, and then the actual, did you make it to the school or did you not kind of portions. So it was around this portion, maybe a few months prior, that I had started composing at the advice of one of my teachers, because he saw my reharmonizations, and he said, you should try your hand at composing. So because of that, I had now a small portfolio of compositions that I could pull from for auditions, and that's exactly what I did. So I auditioned for Manhattan School of Music, New England Conservatory, Berkeley, the New School, and University of North Texas here in Texas. So let's start with the pre-screening. With the pre-screening for a lot of these, I recorded with my teachers. I think it's very important. I should also mention at this point that I didn't mention it because this is meant to be for piano, but I also, not very good, so you're not going to hear it probably for a long time. I've been taking singing lessons with another private teacher for about a year and a half now. And then also I've been playing the trumpet for around 2 years, although I'm nowhere near as good at those instruments as I am the piano. That's why I wanted to focus on the piano. Those instruments definitely helped a little bit though in terms of having music in front of me. Anyway, back to the auditions. So during the pre-screening portion, which is where I had to submit recordings of myself playing before I could even make it to in-person auditions for these music schools, I recorded with a quartet. Usually they give the option to do backing track or get a live quartet. I decided to get a quartet of teachers and musicians around my area that I knew. So my one of the teachers at the school that I go to plays the drums, so I asked him and he agreed to it. Obviously these are for paying. Their time is being paid for. Then my trumpet teacher playing the trumpet so that I could demonstrate accompaniment abilities. And then a fellow musician that I met through my trumpet teacher on the bass. So I recorded a series of songs and 2 compositions with these musicians, and I used that for my pre-screenings. So from there, I did not make the pre-screening for Manhattan School of Music and New England Conservatory. However, I did make the pre-screening for Berkeley and UNT, and then the New School didn't have a pre-screening, if I remember right. So from there, Manhattan School of Music and New England Conservatory were out of the question. So all of these were kind of back to back to back, so I couldn't let one of them distract me and be bummed out because I had to focus on the other one. So fast forward a few months, now we're in January, February, and I have the Berkeley audition in Dallas, Texas. So I go to Dallas, Texas. I'm very nervous, but the audition goes well. And then from there, I find out that I get accepted into the school with a small but sizable scholarship. Then after that, I have the UNT audition, and that one obviously is at UNT in Denton, Texas. So we drive to Denton, Texas. We get there, and this one goes. Truthfully, I have no idea how I got in because I thought I did horrible at it. But I performed one of my compositions for both Berkeley and UNT, and then I get the results back that I made it into UNT as well. Then finally, the new school, I fly out to New York with my parents, and this was only a week away from one another, funny enough. They were really, really close. So as soon as I got to Denton, I had to come back home to my hometown, then immediately got on a plane to Manhattan, and I went to the new school for the live audition, which again, I think I did bad at, but then I ended up getting accepted with a sizable, with a decently sized scholarship as well. So in terms of making the decision of which to go to, whether the new school, Berkeley or UNT, it was rather difficult, but ultimately I decided on UNT because of proximity to where I live. I live in Texas, and so this is also in Texas. And then in addition to that, the cost. The cost is much cheaper at UNT than at either Berkeley or the new school, even with the scholarships factored in. So I decided to go to UNT, which left me with about, I don't know, maybe 8 months to just kind of continue to get better at my craft before I would actually go off. And that marks the end of this phase. So the second to last phase is the instruction portion post-audition. So this is a 6-month phase that runs from March 2023 to July 2023. So, well, that's not 6, is it 6 months? You get the idea. So in this phase, I further focus in on composition, and it's at this point and during the audition portions where I don't know what to call it, but my progression as a composer kind of did like this. Like it grew exponentially. I started off kind of struggling in the beginning, but then I reached a portion where I was coming with a new piece every week to show my teacher, and that is to a degree almost still a trend right now. But for like 8 months, it would be like 1 or 2 pieces per week that I would come to my teachers to show. And now it's kind of like once every 1 to 2 weeks, as I want to focus on getting better performance as well. And then obviously the channel and different things are demanding my attention. But during this portion of my piano career, I focused more on performance and honing in my abilities. For example, with solo piano, I noticed my left hand was growing too reliant on left hand arpeggiation to get a very big, nice sound. And I wanted my sound to be a little more minimalistic, like that of Bill Evans, for example, or Brad Maldu, or what's the professor who used to teach at New England Conservatory? Oh, well, I can't remember. I'll just put the name down here. Anyway, though, I knew I needed to try and focus in on honing my skills further, refining the details of that. And in addition to that, same thing with my compositions, refining the skills and the craft that I developed through studying composition in the real book and just looking at songs that I like. So anyway, from there, I was able to further hone my skills, and I had a sizable portfolio of original pieces by this point. And as at this point that now I would actually start to try and record myself professionally and just, look for opportunities to market my music to the right person, so to speak. Once the right person hears it, they'll push it to where it should go, etc., etc. Not really much to say about this phase. And then moving into the post-instruction phase. So the post-instruction phase is where I'm at, well, at the time of making this video. I start UNT in around 3 or 4 weeks. I know August 21st is the first day. I don't know how many weeks away that is. I should probably know that. And yeah, this is actually a really short phase. It's just me transitioning to music school now and having to say goodbye to my private instruction and moving on to the next step. I truthfully have no idea what's going to come next, and the channel here, I would say, started at the very end of the post-audition instruction phase and at the very beginning of the post-instruction phase. So I'm really looking forward to showing this channel what comes next in the few months and years preceding. All right, and that's it. So this video is part one of a two-part series on my journey as a pianist. This part was just talking about how I got there. The second part is going to be 10 things I wish I knew. So 5 of them are going to be esoteric mindset related advices that I would give to people learning the piano who are below or even above me in terms of progression. And then 5 pieces of advice that are just more practical, like, do this, not that, focus on this, not that, things of that nature. Another thing, I would ask that you not compare my rate of progression to yours or someone else's with the intent of feeling bad. Ultimately, it's going to differ very much how your progression looks from mine, because I've learned this from talking with other musicians. It's a very, very unique thing, the rate of progression. Obviously, I had quarantine giving me more time to practice. I had my parents, I'm very grateful for their financial commitment in hiring this many private instructors to teach me. I had 3 private instructors at the maximum, per week. So that's in like 60 minutes each of them, and then my piano being 90. So that's a lot of financial commitment and investment. And then I think I started late, but relative to what I've seen, I actually started quite early at the age of 17. So that's it. I hope the video is helpful, and I hope you watch part 2. Bye.